Hi there, my fellow Java programmer. In this episode, you'll learn what an OpenSessionInViewFilter is, what it does, what it has to do with LazyInitializationExceptions, and much more. So let's get started. Go back to the library test class in your project source code and insert a new test method and call it OpenSessionInViewFilter or something similar. And then I created an HTTP server utils class which you can check out yourself. But for now, what's important to know is that there are several methods on that util class, like start web server. And that allows you to start a web server on a specific port on your local host, put in a server class, and then a web server boots up, which allows you to serve web pages, and you can get these web pages in your test. And that's what we're going to do to trigger the LazyInitializationException and see that the OpenSessionInViewFilter works. And instead of a null server class, I should have put in an empty servlet I prepared here, the episode servlet. Great. Then there's another method where you can simply call DoGet on a path, so localhost 8080. Makes sense. And you get some HTML back. And at the end of the test, you want to assert that the HTML starts with, and then let's simply copy the HTML from the last test, from the last episode, down here. Good. Now run the test, see what happens. And when you scroll up a tiny bit, you'll see that in fact, a server connector was started on localhost 8080. Great. But the test fails, saying, well, the string we expected was empty, but we expected to get proper HTML back. Good, that's what we're going to do right now. So in the episode servlet, let's override the DoGet method, because that's the method that responds to this call here. And usually what you're going to do is you're going to have a call like list series equals find series. So please just get all the series. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please check out the last episodes, right? And then you can actually go up here to the very first test and just quickly copy and paste everything you have up here down in the find series method. Let's clean things up a little because we really want to have one SQL statement only executed, and that's the select everything from the series table. Great, like that. Then usually what happens in a web framework, and it doesn't have to be a plain servlet, it could be a fully fledged Spring application where you have controllers and whatnot, but first of all you have a business function which returns you some data, and then you render that data to HTML, let's say, or to JSON and whatever. So let's do like so. You're going to have a method, string HTML equals render HTML. Create the method. Again, go up here, copy these lines from the test, from the last test, and you have to switch things up a little bit. First of all, you have to return the string here, and then you want to go through every series, right? For every series like so. And then you're going to go series get episodes for each, right? And now the call is finished again, and I'm just missing a closing bracket. So you basically step through every series, then get the episodes for every series, and then just append them to the HTML with a list tag. Great, and now the last thing that's missing is do a response, get writer, and make sure you write out the HTML to the HTTP response. Good. Now let's rerun the test again and see what happens this time. Application boots up, and when you scroll up, you'll see that you get a LazyInitializationException, failed to LazyInitialize a collection of role series.episodes. Now why is that again? Just a quick cutback to the last episode. You see up here, you do a find series call. And when you look at the call you just created, you basically open up a session and that's a database connection here, and you close it again automatically. And inside that database connection, you do a select to the series table, which means you don't do a select on the episodes table, because that would have meant a join or something similar. And then later on in the render HTML method, you try to step through every series, which is fine, but then you try to get the episodes for every series, and there are no episodes because you didn't fetch them, and that's why you get the exception. Now, there's two ways to solve this. First of all, you could basically simply adjust the query to make the query join or initialize the episodes with the series, which is preferred. And the other way is to use an OpenSessionInViewFilter. What does that mean? So first of all, let's have a look. You remove that line and simply do a session factory get current session create query. So you expect that there's always a session open in here. You don't have to adjust the query or anything. Then in your filter, you'll find a skeleton down here. What you do is also rather simple. You just do a call session factory get current session, which will open one if there isn't one open already. So you have your session here. Then you do a session begin transaction, just make sure you have a transaction for the whole call. Then you do the chain filter, because that's not the only method you want to call. You want to end up in the servlet. So you have the response here. And then at the end, make sure to wrap the whole thing. And then what you want to do is you want to commit the transaction, and then you want to close the session again. And maybe you also want to make sure you don't have 3s in your session like so. That's a simplified OpenSessionInViewFilter, but that's basically how all the OpenSessionInViewFilters, how Spring's OpenSessionInViewFilter work. You simply open up a session for the whole HTTP request, then do whatever you have to do, and at the end of the request, you close your session or your database connection again. Now let's scroll up again and make sure that you specify the OpenSessionInViewFilter here when you start your embedded web server, and then simply run the test again. And this time you can see the test is green, and it obviously worked. You don't have a lazy initialization exception anymore, and you get HTML back that starts with all episodes. Great. What I now want you to do, however, is to debug the test again. So let's debug it. It boots up again. Right. So now you can see when you step over the find series call, you have one select to the database. And that's great performance-wise. But now comes the render HTML step. Step over it again, and you can see there was another select statement. Now the trick is we only have one series in our list here, so you only get one select everything from the episodes table again. If you had 10 series or 20 series, you'd get 20 or 10 select statements, additional select statements, because for every series you query the list of episodes again. And that's also called the N+1 problem, and I'll explain it in more detail in a future episode. But now what you can see is that you can easily run into performance problems when you carelessly just use the OpenSessionInViewFilter everywhere, instead of making sure that your query up here just returns the data that it should to render the view, because you can easily put all of this in just one query. And that's what I want you to do actually as an exercise. I want you to fix the query down here so that you select the series and episodes in one go, and don't use the OpenSessionInViewFilter anymore for your request up here, so you can start the web server without it, but that the call still succeeds. And additionally, I want you to think about any other problems that could arise with that construct here. And if you've got some thoughts on it or whatever, leave a comment in the comment section. I'll answer every single one. Congratulations, by now you should know your way around Hibernate's lazy initialization exception, including the OpenSessionInViewFilter. And as that concludes the series, it's now time for you to start with the next series, so let's get right after it.